Don and Steve plus Phil Herndon back in the studio. TinManMinistries.org. You say that. You know that's true.
I know.
Our family that listens to Don and Steve plus, the consensus says they love Phil Herndon.
Oh, that's so good. Good to hear.
Yes, so good. And I want to talk about something that I don't quite understand.
Okay.
I don't think I understand. Because we all have story, and we talk about that a lot when you're with us. Mm-hmm. And recently I was talking to someone who said that they have a loved one that doesn't understand how to get in touch with their story. And I thought, is that possible? Can we repress, suppress, live a life that doesn't tap into yesteryear so much so that we don't remember or know how to get to our story?
Yes. And thank goodness that's a temporary condition. We are made, just think about just in Scripture, man, there are so many pages where almost all of the Old Testament is story. And when it's not common, our current story, God says, hey, remember back. Mm-hmm. And so obviously we are, one of the popular phrases is we are storied creatures. That we walk around with story. Little children they don't want you to read a cookbook to them or a tech manual. They want a story.
That's true.
And so we are made for story because the brain is, magnificent as God has made it. It is a predictive organ. It loves prediction, and so stories follow a plot line. The Joseph Campbell wrote the book A Hero's Journey. He talks about the movements of all great stories are the same. So the template is in the brain. We're made that way. Mm-hmm. But yes, to start off the conversation, it is possible that, and I know many people through the years who say, gosh, I can't really think of anything other than just kind of nothing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nothing really happened.
Because I wonder how many of us, when we hear, well, that's because of your story, or you need to unpack or tell your story, we're like, I don't really know what that means. I mean, I can tell you I was born, I was raised by X number of parents, had X number of siblings, but I don't get the value of telling my history. Mm-hmm. Is story just the same as history? Is that a different way of saying tell your history?
That question can be answered well, yes, and then it can be answered well, no.
Okay, so help me grasp that.
We'll do the well, no part mainly. It includes history, but story really, if you think about it, we have words like triggered, post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress. We have all these phrases that describe the fact that, yes, chronologically speaking, story is our history because we count time in minutes and seconds and days and even centuries. However, the part of the brain where our story is stored does not do chronology like that. Think about something even pleasant, like, well, if it is pleasant, not so much for me sometimes, but if you think about a song you knew in high school, you'll immediately be flooded with these memories of people you were with in high school who you knew, your prom date that dumped you, or whatever it may be, and so we'll have feelings attached with these songs that come about.
I feel like there's a story right there.
Is there a story, Dawn?
So much I don't remember, and I didn't do drugs in high school. I didn't. I have no idea. I haven't done drugs ever. By the way, I'll just throw that in there. But I know a lot of people will say, "Well, listen, I was into sex, drugs, and rock and roll in high school, so I don't remember any of it." That's not my story,
right?
But you say all the memories come flooding back, and I'm like, is that how that's supposed to work? I think I'm beginning to understand how people don't get to their story.
There's your answer.
There it is.
That is an example, though, of sometimes what kind of pain we're going through or whatever, we'll keep those things from happening, but something happens, even if it's like, I remember that song. Mm-hmm. When we say we remember that song, there is a content part of our, I'm pointing to my left brain, there's a left brain that goes, oh yeah, that song came out in the 80s, or in my case in the 70s. But there's another part that goes, yeah, and I've got things attached with that song because that's the way I remember that song so well. Mm-hmm. It's not just content. And so something simple like that. So a lot of times people will say that, but when you mention something that is a marker, like a song or a location, or like still to this day, if I drive into Marietta, Georgia, where we moved from, after I lived there most of my growing up life, I will remember how sad it was to leave, and how good it is to be back, for example. So it's not often real dramatic. A lot of times people will kind of comment, you said, Steve, people will say, man, that's about your story. And we go, oh, it is?
Right.
No. Now what?
Now, exactly.
And so sometimes it can be way simpler than that, to just start talking about what we do know about the story without worrying about trauma or terrible memories. A lot of times people just need to be warmed up to be able to start telling the story, because we have that story stored up here in us.
Well, I know you do conferences, and if you go into a conference with a particular way you're going to address the crowd so that they can get in touch with their story, is there a process, or do you just go, okay, tell me your story?
Yeah, just tell your, come on. Kind of both. A lot of people, and I don't really know what to attribute it to. A lot of people have, man, their story, including all their traumas, right on the tip of their tongues. It's easily accessible. And other people are like, I'm pretty sure bad stuff happened. I don't remember any of that. And one of the ways to kind of, I guess you would say, trigger that, it's hard in a big group, but it's possible, is to just say, look, I just want you to start listing some things. And there's an important concept. Almost every podcast in the world will talk about, naming is not blaming. They're not necessarily the same. And so a lot of what keeps people from moving deeply into their stories is they don't want to blame their parents. And I don't want them to blame their parents. I don't want my son blaming me, and I don't want to blame mine. And so sometimes what can open up the door to telling the story in a conference setting or three people sitting together is just to say, I really want you to talk about you in your story, not them. And sometimes that gives people permission to say, okay, that's my story, and all these people are in it. And a lot of times we make it very, very dramatic, when it's actually can be pretty ordinary. Like, just tell the story of your life and who your teachers were and what you did in school. What did you like growing up? Are you artistic? Are you athletic? Do you like books? What do you remember about yourself? And a lot of times people are so guarded because I don't want to blame other people or be weak. They just forget that the story is not them. The story is, this is what I did in my life, and these were the people in it. So we'll start with something like that, like in a conference. Like, just start thinking about or talking at your table about things you remember about you in your story. What do you remember about you? What did you like to do? Did you spend time in your room? Or were you an extroverted kid who ran around and had all kinds of friends? And so people, when they start talking about themselves being, this is not biblical, but it's good for the anthropology, when they are kind of the star of the show and not worrying about the other characters. So we'll start doing something like that. Then I'll have people, something as simple as draw a circle on a piece of paper and just say, I want you inside that circle, I just want you to write in one color the really great things that you received in your home growing up. What some great work ethic, kindness, generosity, graciousness, great storytellers, or whatever it may be. And then I want you to list in another color the things that happened inside your house you would rather have not happened. Could be deaths of people that are significant, or pets, or moving, like in my story, moving a lot more than you wanted to. And that can really help warm people up to getting into more and more detail. We just start and they can look at that circle on a piece of paper and go, man, I got more red on here than I thought once I started thinking about it, or more green. And so sometimes that helps. If we had it here in front of us, we could draw our slide. We could draw that circle and write in different colors, like, what did you receive? And like in my case, it would be, I was a kind of an introverted kid, loved baseball, and I was pretty secure until we started moving around. And in red, I would write lots of moves. For instance, kind of thing. And so that kind of primes the pump.
I think one of the things that I initially, when I hear tell your story, I'm like, well, why? Like, what is even the point of telling my story? I, number one, may struggle to go back and be able to do a lot of those things that you're talking about. Number two, if there is a lot of red in my circle, I don't want to have to necessarily go back and revisit those things. Yeah. Can't I just write a new story from here going forward? What is the value of going back?
Yeah, it's like and I'm going to get in trouble using computer examples. I think it's like a hard drive. Like, that stuff is there. And here's how the brain works. The brain holds on to every part of our story. What we would call bad parts, the negative parts, the harmful parts, this brain we talk about a lot called the limbic system. It will hold on to that memory in order to not let that happen again. A good friend of mine who actually he's a real live neuroscientist, he says that there's a part of the brain that is designed to never let that happen to me again. And so we're not storing the painful parts of the story because it feels so great to remember it again, but the brain holds on to it and says, this happened to Steve, and my job is to keep Steve safe, so I'm going to keep that story handy. And so we'll end up pushing people away or staying away from certain things. And so that part of the brain is not doing chronology. It's doing right now. That's where we get the phrase PTSD. It's post-traumatic, but it's a stress disorder because it's happening now up here.
Wow. So if it's happening now up here and we're pushing people away and we're not even cognizant of why we're pushing people away, if we hear that and it resonates with us, what is there another circle we should draw to try to get deeper into our story, or what do we do with that once we've discovered, oh, that's me?
Yeah. That's where those 8 pesky words we talk about come in. The dreaded words, the vehicle for story in terms of dealing with the painful parts of the story. And even you say painful, like some of the greatest parts of my story are my maternal grandfather. He was my early hero, and then he died. And so even that story, as much as I loved him and love him to this day, there's pain in that story too. So it doesn't just mean that's all been trauma or all been great. We love to dichotomize things so we don't have to deal with the painful part. But that's where I'm aware of some things. I've got more red in that circle than I thought I would have after I've thought about it some. What happened to me? Where was I in the story? That's where I get out those 8 words and I go, where in my story does this, let's just say loneliness, where was I lonely? And easy to ping off my own story. I was lonely every school I went to after 9th grade because I was the new kid every year. And so, for instance, we just go through that list with a trusted friend, with a therapist, with a pastor, with someone who loves me, or in my own journal, and say, okay, I'm going to look at this word lonely and this word fear and this word sad. I'm just going to start writing down some things that those words bring up in me, because those are the words that are the vehicles of the telling of that story.
So when we, in a sense, get in touch with our story and we realize that what is happening current day touches on something that is in that circle that is in red, and we begin to write those things down, like I know I can get the fact that, yes, I could tell a therapist, I could tell a good friend, maybe even a pastor, and there's something about getting that out that can be helpful. But if that person who is causing the pain in our story happens to be a person that we're close to, they're like, hey, what's going on? Why are you in this funk? Why are you feeling this way?
Yeah.
Is that a person to tell a story to?
Yeah, that's where it gets dicey and no.
Okay.
That's where boundaries come in. And it's funny you say that, Steve, because, we've said that, I think sitting here before, that when we talk about boundaries, we've got to include the word harm. And if someone has caused harm, I actually had a conversation on the way in to work this morning about this topic with someone. Someone currently in their life was really, emotionally speaking, a dangerous person, and that was the question this person asked. Like, that's not being mean, and it's not being isolative. It's like, wait until you can tell this story in a safe place, and then with that safe person, run that by them. Do I need to talk to this person about this now or not? Because once it starts coming, it isn't necessarily a torrent. I hear that a lot. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid if I open this thing up, the dam's just going to burst, and it's just going to be. And sometimes it feels that way on the front end. I believe it is as God, if God set the limits of the ocean and God set the limits of how far things could go in nature, I'm real sure his image bearers have the same governor in their brains. And so, and I know it feels overwhelming. I've been there myself. And so sometimes that's also a myth that comes up that keeps people away from doing it. But once you get the pump primed by, I'm the player in the story, I'm going to tell my story, there are other people in it. and then I'm going to assign these feelings to it. Then I start telling someone. That's where people get to know me, and I get to make those decisions with their help about who to tell and when.
Oh, wow. Powerful to prime the pump. I can't get my alliteration out. Prime the pump, but to see the worth in the story, like Steve, you're talking about. But if you're so afraid of stepping into that, how do you breach that fear so that there's benefit in unpacking all of that harm that came to you?
Yes. Most of the harm that has come, let's just say in family of origin, doesn't have to be family of origin. My goodness, people harm people.
Yeah.
Let's just say that, for example. What has happened is that person has grown up in an emotional environment that feels dangerous to this part of the brain. And if it feels dangerous, the brain's going to go into protective mode. It's going to cinch up and protect, or lash out and protect. So it's going to do protection first. And that comes by way of regulating off of the faces, some of whom may have done the damage. And so there's, we don't ever outgrow that. Like, well, I go, your face changed, and Steve and I said, so Dawn, is there maybe something, that? And so we don't ever outgrow regulating off faces. Like, and the question we're asking constantly is, am I okay? Like my friend Steve, he's glaring and frowning, and I hope it's like because the Cubs lost or something. I hope I didn't do something mean, or whatever. And so we're constantly asking that question all the time. And so safe relationships, there's a lot of bandwidth available. Patience means bearing the burden of hope. Just sitting with somebody, and it may take a lot of reps. And the best thing we can do as we're caring for one another in the body in particular is say, you don't have to do anything. There's no big rush in blowing out all this trauma and telling the story and the guts of the story. Even in a therapy office, like, we can take all the time you need. I did it this afternoon in a thing called an intensive. We can take our time, and we'll let God and what's happening up here for your protection get settled down. And so when we are regulating off of a safe face and the resonance around that relationship feels safe, the nervous system will calm down. And then we can do what the neuro people call top-down thinking. We can begin to think clearly and begin to tell that story. But we've got to have, it's an overused phrase, but we've got to have safe spaces to do that, because how I got here is a lack of safety. And it's the environment and the faces.
So if someone feels safe enough to begin to open up and tell you their story, and all of a sudden you realize, they're doing exactly what we've been talking about right here, and their story is kind of horrific.
Yeah.
And you hear about a lot of pain and potentially a lot of trauma and maybe violence and abuse and these things. There's a part of, I think, us as humans that is going to want to react to that story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How does the receiver of that story react well?
This sounds, on the surface, it sounds egotistical, and it isn't. It's actually the opposite. It's very important to make sure I'm telling, if I'm receiving that from Dawn, that I'm telling you how that impacts me. What that does is, it's like I said, it sounds kind of like narcissistic on the surface, like, this is the impact on me, Dawn. What that does is it lets you know that I'm feeling my own feelings about what you're telling me. I love you, I care about you, and what you say has an impact. But with that impact, what that does, if I'm telling you the impact on me, I don't start my own story there, but I let you know that's the impact, and it also safeguards me from attempting to fix you. Like when we can meet on a human level, and I go, man, Dawn, that is so sad. Like, my goodness, gee whiz, that takes me back to just how sad I've been at times. So I'm able to sit with you and how sad you are, man. And I appreciate you telling me. That really does two things. It lets her know, lets you know I'm in this with you. Like, I've got human feelings about your human condition, And it also, as it brings us closer together, because what I'm saying to you is, hey, I'm human too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It keeps me from going, well, you know what you ought to do is so and so and so. So that's whatever the opposite of bonding is that.
And I would imagine there's an element of validation that she receives as you say, yeah, those feelings seem to be legit.
Yes.
Those feelings are, it's no wonder.
Yes,
you're
exactly right.
dealing with a lot of that. Yeah.
And that's where it sounds so simple, but what are the two main complaints people have? And they're legitimate. Either, well, he made it all about himself or herself and went off on their own story, or just started trying to fix me. And we'll just take a step back and go, oh, man, I think I'd be lonely there too. Or my goodness, I'd be angry. Mm-hmm. Or that would scare me out of my wits also. That lets us take a step back emotionally and go, I need to join with her, be in this story with her. Don't hijack it because I'm having feelings, but also don't project onto her what I need her to do so I can be okay, which is why we fix people.
Well, for Phil Herndon with us, and if you want to find out more about Phil and get connected with Tin Man Ministries, encourage you to do that. We'll put the link in the show notes, so check that out, tinmanministries.org, another way to get connected there. But Phil, thank you for coming in and helping us think about our story a little bit today.
Thank you.
Well, and we also want to encourage you to check out the show notes to get connected with Raphael's. Raphael's helps make this possible and appreciate their support. And you can visit the website, donandsteveplus.com, find out more about the podcast, ways to help out. So thank you for doing all that. Thank you for being our plus one today.